Well, it's crazy weather. I know how it is at Iowa because I was out there in one of those campaign things. I rode a horse. It was 102 degrees.
In May?
In the parade. No, it was June or July, I think. Yeah. And I also was in Spirit Lake. It was minus 60 wind chills. So Iowa goes up and down.
Somewhere they just had 5 inches of snow. In May. So we're having crazy weather.
The snow is over, and the snow is still on the ground. We've now got record high temperatures. Some have gone above 100 degrees in parts of the Midwest, including Iowa.
And that hot weather is being followed by violent storms with high winds, heavy rains, and dangerous hail. Caitlin Burke has the story.
After one of the harshest winters on record, spring is bringing unusually hot weather, and along with it, some dangerous storms. Severe weather is expected today from Minnesota to Texas. The worst of the storms hitting throughout the afternoon into the evening. Forecasters warn that in some areas, multiple severe storms could strike, so residents are warned to stay alert even after the first round. Wednesday, storms swept through Colorado, spawning at least 5 tornadoes, including this one, which was caught on camera near Akron. Other parts of Colorado saw wind gusts up to 70 miles an hour and golf ball-sized hail. Heavy winds near Wichita, Kansas are blamed for derailing this train.
I didn't know what to think. I was shocked that it was strong enough to blow the train cars. I mean, I come across all the snap power poles and the power lines down, but I didn't think it was strong enough to blow the train over until I looked down there and saw it laying on its side.
30 train cars were knocked off the tracks by the 90-mile-an-hour winds. In Salt Lake City, thunderstorms affected air travel, lightning bolts striking 8 planes as they were trying to land. This severe weather comes on the heels of a recent string of devastating tornadoes across the South. President Obama got a first-hand look at the devastation in Arkansas. 15 people were killed in that state alone.
When something like this happens to a wonderful community like this one, it happens to all of us.
The president promised the government will help the victims rebuild their communities. Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
We've got 2 emotions. I think one of the emotions, be honest. You think, well, thank the Lord it wasn't me. I wasn't in the middle of that. I mean, you think that. The other thing is, how can we help those people who've been stricken by these devastating storms? We're going to have more and more and more of them, it looks like. I mean, terrible weather. We had some awful stuff here a couple of days ago. Great big hailstorms piling down on cars and residences. And anyhow, that's life, and we live through it. Well, there's a place where storms are going to be more and more frequent, and that is the capital of the United States of America, Washington, D.C. Republicans are now trying to find out what happened to the IRS Tea Party scandal. John Jessup has that story from Washington. Here's John.
Pat, House Republicans have voted to hold former IRS official Lois Lerner in contempt of Congress, with 6 Democrats joining the majority. Lerner has consistently refused to testify at committee hearings about her role in the IRS Tea Party controversy. The House is also calling on the Justice Department to appoint a special counsel to investigate. Congress is split on the issue, with critics of the vote saying it's an attempt by the GOP to stir up controversy against Democrats in an election year. But House Speaker John Boehner says it's time for the American people to learn the truth. At least 125 people are dead after scores of gunmen opened fire on a busy marketplace in northern Nigeria. Authorities suspect the Islamic terrorist group Boko Haram carried out the attack. Some say as many as 300 people died in the 12-hour massacre as the terrorists set fire to homes and shot people trying to flee. Boko Haram triggered international outrage when it kidnapped more than 200 schoolgirls in mid-April. Nigerian police are offering a nearly $400,000 reward for information leading to their rescue. The popular cable channel HGTV has pulled the plug on an upcoming real estate series called Flip It Forward. The network for the past month had been filming Christian brothers David and Jason Benham, who were going to help families buy homes they thought they never could afford. The website Right Wing Watch labeled David an anti-gay extremist because of his activities against same-sex marriage. CBN News profiled the brothers' business in 2012.
We started building out what we envisioned that a kingdom business should look like, and we didn't read any books by anybody, nothing. Everything was fresh, and God exploded our business because we wanted to glorify him.
The cancellation led to a firestorm on HGTV social media platforms, with some applauding the move and others criticizing the network for intolerance. The Benhams released a statement saying, in part, with all of the grotesque things that can be seen and heard on television today, you'd think there'd be room for two twin brothers who are faithful to our families, committed to biblical principles, and dedicated professionals. If our faith costs us a television show, then so be it. Pat, the Benham's father, also told LifeSite News the gay lobby is the biggest bully in America.
Well, there's no question about it. There's absolute intolerance that's coming in. You know, that Home and Garden television I thought was terrific. And when I was involved in International Family, I was hoping to buy a piece of it because it was, and then in its infancy, it's become so very successful. I believe it's owned by the Hearst organization, and I don't know them as anti-gay or anything, or anti-Christian or whatever, but this stuff is nonsense. I mean, the political correctness is just stultifying speech. I was reading an op-ed piece that Daniel Henniger wrote in the Wall Street Journal today about what's happening in colleges, and it is appalling, and it's being led by the Obama administration. But this whole thing is disgusting. What they tried to do with that guy on Duck Dynasty and what they're trying to do in this is just outrageous. I mean, good grief. Isn't there supposed to be some freedom? Aren't we supposed to have a First Amendment? But not so. I read also today in Saudi Arabia, one of our, quote, allies, that a person who had a liberal blog, he does an internet blog, and he's criticized some of the leaders of the Islamic faith over there. He was sentenced to a number of years in prison and 1,000 lashes. You just wonder how somebody could live through that. But that's what they call apostasy. And if you do too much apostasy, you can get killed. So there's intolerance in this world, and it's crazy because we've lost our moorings, our boundaries. There was a time in America we had a consensus. The consensus was built around the Bible and around our Christian faith. Now we say this is post-Christian, we're not a Christian nation, and so forth, and we're not exceptional, we're not this, that, and the other. We're losing it, folks. It's time we get back to basics, and I think God is going to give us something important, and I think we've got a story that's going to tell you about it on this show today. John.
That's right, Pat. Some call it the most important news story that was never told. The story of potentially thousands of babies killed over the span of 30 years by one man, West Philadelphia late-term abortion doctor Kermit Gosnell. Critics say his crimes have been hidden from the public eye through a continuous campaign of censorship. Recently, I traveled to Los Angeles to talk to two people who are trying to bring the untold story to light.
For years, the sign on this building read, Women's Medical Society. But after learning what was going on inside, it became known as a house of horrors. The abortion clinic owner and practitioner, Dr. Kermit Gosnell, is now serving 3 life sentences for killing babies that were born alive. Last May, a Philadelphia jury also found him guilty of killing a 41-year-old woman in a botched abortion.
A year after the guilty conviction, it's here in Los Angeles, the other side of the country, where the next chapter of the story is unfolding. Independent filmmakers Ann McElhaney and her husband Philip McAleer have made it their mission to make a movie exposing the truth about Kermit Gosnell.
I think this is the biggest serial killer in American history, and Americans need to know what was done and how it happened and how he was allowed to go on killing for 40 years.
McAleer and his wife plan to bring the story to the small screen sometime next year. But first, they need to raise enough money. They've launched a crowdfunding campaign on Indiegogo, a site that pulls individual donations to help get creative projects off the ground. So far, they've raised about 90% of their $2.1 million goal.
We feel an enormous responsibility now to tell this story well and to do it right. So we are very worried we're not going to meet the total. We're very exhausted because we're working so hard.
But then every day something happens that makes us think, oh my God, this is extraordinary. Like last week, we had a man who tweeted out a photograph of his just born granddaughter and said to celebrate her birth on that day, he sent us $100.
They view each donation as a vote, voicing opposition to what they call media censorship. noting the big network's refusal to cover the Gosnell story in favor of the Jodi Arias trial. The filmmakers say the censoring campaign continued when Kickstarter, their original choice for funding, asked them to make some changes.
So Kickstarter were just continuing in that grand tradition of censoring this story, of making sure that the light, the antiseptic light of truth, would never ever penetrate this Philadelphia abortion clinic where these children were murdered, thousands of them. And to this day, they are unremembered. We're going to change all that.
They've taken their crusade to the conservative media, and their efforts are getting some help from major Hollywood backers like Kevin Sorbo, the star of the recent film God's Not Dead.
We'd like to ask you to help our friends Anne McElhenney and Phelim McAleer to make a film about Kermit Gosnell.
If the media won't do their job, then we can do it ourselves.
They're celebrities, they're Hollywood people. As you know, Kevin has just had this very successful movie. And, you know, we just went and we asked them, and they didn't hesitate for a second, not for a millisecond. They said, we're in.
No strangers to tackling controversy, they believe this film will have the power to change the abortion debate in America. But they say that won't happen if they fail to meet their goal.
Then all the money goes back to the people. The money goes straight back to their credit card. But the film doesn't get made, and Kermit Gosnell's name then fades into obscurity. His crimes fade into obscurity.
And all the people who don't want the story to be known win.
And his victims are never remembered.
Something they vow not to let happen.
For more information on this film project, you can visit our website, cbnnews.com. More than 175 American Christian leaders signed a pledge of solidarity supporting persecuted Christians in the Middle East. Evangelical and Orthodox Christian leaders came together here in the nation's capital for the event. Catholic Cardinal Donald Wuerl says the church cannot be silent, especially while some of Christianity's oldest communities are driven into exile or even extinction. They specifically mentioned Christians in Egypt, Iraq, and Syria. And the pastor of St. George Anglican Church in Baghdad said Iraqi children ask him, "Has the world forgotten us?" Pat, it's time for Christians, especially those of us in the West, to speak out.
Great persecution. Ladies and gentlemen, what's happening in our world? There seems to be, there's that famous poem about the center can't hold. After World War I, the center can't hold. Well, what's holding things together? Well, God can do that, and God is doing it. There's a tremendous move of God taking place in countries like Iran.
The president of Hobby Lobby is launching a campaign to introduce Bible courses in thousands of public schools by 2017 as an elective. Steve Green says he does not want to force Christianity on anyone. He is simply concerned America is in danger because of its ignorance of God's word. The Mustang School District in Oklahoma City will be the first to include the course this coming fall. Montana's Attorney General says he supports keeping a 6-foot-tall statue of Jesus on U.S. Forest Service land next to a whitefish ski hill. Attorney General Tim Fox is asking the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals to uphold a federal judge's January ruling. It allows the Forest Service to renew a permit for the statue at Whitefish Mountain Resort. 20 members of Congress submitted a separate brief supporting the statue. A district judge says the Jesus statue is used more for photo opportunities and as a meeting point than for religious reflection. Remember, you can always get the latest from CBN News by going to our website, cbnnews.com.